Welcome back to another episode of Nydal. In this episode, we're going to be working on, the area around the river that you see on the top-ish side of the screen. But before we get to that, I do want to sort of point out the fact that in the previous stream, I don't know if you saw it, we were trying to fix the issue with ships. There's so many ships appearing around the city, so I sort of came up with the idea of doing some kind of weird transfer station so that the ships will still spawn and everything, but they will be out of not really visible in the back. That worked, but it wasn't great. But I just sort of decided to scrap that idea. We'll get to that in a minute, but before I continue, let me just address a pretty recurring comment in the previous video. Many of you were super upset that I didn't put fences around the tennis court, so here's some fences around the tennis court. And so because I'm not necessarily sure I want to keep those ship transfer stations where they were, even though those were somewhat temporary, but as you can see here, I'm just removing absolutely everything. When we were doing that live stream, however, someone in the chat suggested that maybe I could do some ferry lines in the urban part of the city. Hence the title of this episode. We're going to be doing some ferries that sort of connect the different parts or the different neighborhoods that are adjacent to the water. Also, there's a lot of people that are really amused by how I pronounce ferries or ferries sometimes. So not much you can do about that. But I'm glad you find that amusing. I don't know. Now I'm super conscious about it, so I guess I will pause every time I say the word ferry so that I can properly pronounce things the ways you guys are expecting it. I don't know what I was saying. So I scrapped that idea. We're doing ferries in the sort of urban area, and obviously we need to add some stops. So this is me sort of trying to retrofit these very minimalistic, thin, low profile ferry stops. Now, originally when I built those bridges across the river, I didn't really thought that I was that I could potentially have some ferry lines transporting people from one point to another of the city. But they're not very tall. That's sort of my point here. And during that last live stream, as I said, another viewer sort of suggested that I try these low profile riverboats. I think they're by Ami. And I'm actually using those. I'm not a huge fan of the textures. I think they need a little bit more detail, but as far as the model goes, it looks great. And honestly, from afar, you'll see it in the cinematics at the end. It looks pretty good. So I'm okay with the implementation of these boats, and these are by far one of the prettiest boats that are in the workshop anyways. Unfortunately, some of the other more good looking ones, even the vanilla one looks pretty good in my opinion, but yeah, they're so big that they won't fit under the bridges. So I'm going for this one. And in fact, I only end up adding 3 on this sort of inner line here. Just wanted to make them kind of realistic. In general, you don't have a million of those across cities, especially for such a shorter route like this one. Also, you might be wondering what the hell I'm doing right now. So I had to put the ferry depot somewhere. Originally it was on that transfer stop on the other edge of the map, but since I deleted it all, I had to replop it. And the new location is right next to the sports sort of center / club we did just a few episodes ago. Problem is, we had that little loop-de-loop. You can kind of see it on the top right corner of the screen. Well, now it's gone. But that little loop-de-loop from the tram line, I just need some place for those to sort of turn around. And, it's kind of floating there, so I just end up creating that weird structure that you saw a minute ago. This is a much longer explanation to something that took literally 15 seconds, and it's now gone from the screen. But, I just didn't want that structure to just sort of be floating up in the air. By the way, this is the line as it ended up being. I try to make it as organic and as realistic as possible. Obviously, ships clip into there and to the station. I think that even happens with the 100% vanilla stations. That was like one of the things that I was a bit bummed when Mass Transit came out, but it's fine. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Still looks mostly good. And now I'm not sure how effective this line is. I just let it run for quite some time. There was a handful of passengers, using it, but I didn't like see any major like usage from this, at least not yet. Especially because at sort of in the second half of this episode, we're going to be expanding the city a little bit, and we're going to be doing some landscaping work that I 100% wasn't planning on doing, but I just kind of did it anyways. In fact, I posted a screenshot on my Twitter page. You should totally follow twitter.com/StrickToaster. I think it's like one of the most liked screenshots that I posted in a while. Everyone has been like really positive about that. I mean, the reason why I'm bringing this up is not to brag about my like account, but to sort of, I don't know, I want to come out clean. I'm not super, it looks great in the screenshots and all that. In fact, you probably already saw a thumbnail, or the thumbnail of this video will look kind of like that. It's like very eye candy, but only when you look at it like really close. When you look at it from afar, it looks okay, but it's not amazing. So I may come back to that and do it later. But yeah, this episode's already kind of a mess because I'm just talking about things that haven't even happened yet. And by the time they happen, then I'll probably be, I guess, talking about something else to not repeat myself. I don't know. It's been a long day. I had a lot of issues rendering this video and a few others that are coming out soon. I've been sort of fighting with Premiere 2019, which it doesn't matter. I'm not gonna get into that. I've also been tweeting something along those lines. I've been venting a lot on Twitter is basically what I'm trying to say. Over here, sort of continuing this retrofitting of these ferry stops. As you can see, I just dragged a road that curves into the station. It's kind of, there's a pretty big high difference between the shoreline and the street, so it looks kind of wonky. So that's why I sort of clipped some stair props just so that the gap there is not super intense. And I wasn't, like I said before, I wasn't planning on doing this park stuff, but I sort of drifted into that as it was somewhat close to the area of the city that I was working on. You'll see in a minute. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself. For the most part, I wanted this area to look like very green-ish because so far everything is pretty concrete looking, and I just wanted to add a little bit of a larger green footprint. And you probably noticed there, I was just moving the camera all over the place, mostly to make sure that the line, I had to tweak the lines with the, basically would move it to make sure that they're really in the middle. At first I thought the whole, there's a width when you place the ferry lines. And for a moment I thought it was just the boats will actually be inside of these two lines instead of this width of path. Turns out that no, that's not true. There's actually the two dash lines that you see in the when you're customizing the line. Those are the lines where ships will be. So it was a little bit of a trial and error because I'm not really used to this game functionality, and just nudging them so that by the time ships go under, I guess, the bridges, they just don't hit the wall, even though in some cases they do. You'll see the cinematics look good though. I made sure that for the most part they're not just clipping into the wall, but there's you can only go so far in this game and certain detail aspects. Now, I sort of had the idea of placing stops on each side of the river. So far I think we ended up with 2 on one side and 1 on the other. I thought about adding more, but it looked like usually ships, I remember when I went to Euroblast, I think, there were not that many ships that would just take you from one place to the other, so so they wouldn't have so many stops. Like stops or journeys will be much longer than, you know, like buses. So having this like zigzag so quickly between the two sides seemed like a little bit overkill. So just sort of tone it down. And at this point, I'm sort of extending this river and trying to like funnel it in a man-made sort of fashion, if that makes any sense. Primarily trying to use some concrete walls to sort of divert the water and just make it a little bit easier to plot these stations. It was kind of a headache because this ferry stop has that road segment that, I don't know, in certain places when I put it down, it like pushed the ground way higher than what the station is. Maybe I've sort of misinterpreted what the behavior was, but as you can see, the ferry stop itself is like way down there, and the segment of road is like way up. I don't know. It was this one primarily was a little bit tricky, and it took a little while to sort of retrofit not only the station but everything that's sort of around it. In this case, the entrance to that grocery store that we worked on a while back. And the other difficult thing in this case was trying to match or, you know, get that height difference to make some kind of sense. I could have just left it and put like some kind of fake tunnel into the ground and told you that there's like stairs, but no, just went full props mode and it looks okay. It's not like amazing. I ended up just switching, having double staircases as opposed to, you know, concrete at the top and the metal structure at the bottom. It looks okay, but don't look too much at it. It looks, for the most part, it looks great at afar, which ultimately is kind of what I'm interested the most in, because that's where I see most of the things in the city the longest, if that makes any sense. So finally, just continuing with the line extension, as you can see, nudging and sort of trying to fix the contour of the path so that it looks a bit more realistic, path that potentially real ships would take. This was particularly tricky, especially editing these notes. I don't know if maybe I'm pretty sure it's just a limitation of how Move It works. Qvoid will probably tell me, but it was it takes like a little while for editing the nodes of the ferry lines to sort of update the map. It's like very laggy, and it's very noticeable, and it's hard to, like, you need to like nudge it and like wait like 1 or 2 seconds, and then it like updates, so you're not sure, like every move you make you have to like wait 2 seconds to make sure that you didn't screw it up. It's what I'm trying to say. So that made it a little bit annoying and time consuming, especially because I was very specific on the path, or I basically was, how did I say that? I wanted to be very specific to where the path of the ship should be. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Going back here, we had these like bike lanes that we worked on a while back, and I started realizing that we don't really need those curves, so I just converted the whole road to 2 lanes in the middle and bike paths on each end, and finally just adding a few props to that ferry stop. That way, it looks like it works. I mean, it does work, but so far no one has been riding it, probably because there's no residential around it. There are some, the grocery stores next door, but I don't think that's attracting enough Sims to that area of the city. Another thing that I'm doing here is just I wanted more of a, so here's the thing. This is where we sort of start getting into a territory of something that I wasn't planning, but I just did it anyways because I thought it was just going to be some like busy work off camera, but I got carried away. So yeah, I just basically went back into this area of the city. Well, this area is actually kind of new, and I end up finishing and decorating this new block that I think I actually started off camera like a good 3-4 months ago, but I never like really did anything. But I was just thinking, let's extend this neighborhood a bit more. And, at some point I tried to put a gas station. It's still there. Like, I haven't removed it yet, but I haven't really finished it. This block, I was I had a bigger urge to finish it because it's been bugging me for a while having that triangle empty. But the problem is, once I got to this part of this block, I sort of looked at the block across the street. We have that park that was sort of laid down many months ago, and really haven't done anything. So I was like, okay, why don't we finally like finish this or make something out of this? And that's when I went nuts and I added a lot of trees that have a very particular shape. They're like extremely manicured. You'll see them in a minute. In fact, they're very visible on the thumbnail of this video. If I'm keeping with the same screenshot that I already took at the time of this recording, it would have been very visible already by the time you do watch this part, or by the time you see them, because they're still not yet on the screen. Man, this commentary is just all over the place. I don't think I'm ever this intense when I do one of these, but hopefully it's entertaining. If it is, by the way, just feel free to give this video a like. That will be nice. The algorithm will appreciate it. And yeah, so the issue for the most part that I have around this for this area of the city is trying to like transition, to have like a nice fun transition between the water and the land. In some places, you know, we have the keys, like everything is like very concretey, but I also wanted to have a bit more vegetation. So this is where I went nuts. I started using those boxy, ultra manicured trees that are actually props, in case you didn't know, if you never use them. I think they're from Ronix, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, a lot of prop line tool on this part of the city. I laid down those dirt pedestrian paths. I wanted to keep this park very minimal. It looks fine at a glance, but it almost feels like there's just something else that we need to do to this. It just doesn't look quite right. Besides the fact that I'm adding an absurd amount of planters that I will later remove, at least some of them I will. Like those didn't quite make sense, but I wanted to have like some areas with heavier and like dense vegetation to sort of contrast with all the manicure stuff. And as you can see, it's not like perfectly aligned. It's like there's like two parks that are kind of adjacent but not really connected with one another. I wanted to not make everything be like super perfect and symmetric. Nydal for the most part so far has been kind of a mess if you've seen like individual neighborhoods and parts of the city, but that's actually kind of what I like about it, that it's like when you look at it from above, there's no like immediately obvious places. Everything is kind of like fractal noise of sort. I don't know. I might be going a little crazy with my descriptions here, but hopefully that makes some kind of sense. But yeah, at this point I kind of ran out of ideas. I knew that I wanted something else on that patch of grass, and I added those props. Not sure I'm gonna keep those, but for now they work. Now you also probably noticed that I sort of laid down a few roads adjacent to this park. I've been sort of doing some suburbs off camera. I've showed them in the previous live stream, in case you haven't seen them, but right at the beginning. You don't have to watch the 2.5 hours or however long that one was, but I sort of started working on that area. It's mostly going to be servers. Actually, I have a few ideas for like a couple special belts, and they might actually happen relatively soon. But I'm talking specifically about the area to the right top corner of the screen where the gas station is now. There's going to be some development there. But that pretty much is the end of this episode. Please do enjoy the cinematics and give this video a like if you liked it. All right, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next episode.